Last week on Thursday, I started a series of interviews that I'm having with some folks who are coming into town to be a part of a really interesting, provocative panel. It's an event that's happening at Burlingame Hall on Saturday, September 7th. It's called Project 2025 and the Threat of Christian Nationalism. Some folks have heard of this Project 2025. For others, it's a mystery. It might be the first time you're hearing about it. But there are certainly people who are concerned, and I thought it would be great for us to have a chance to preview this event and get some more background, not just about Project 2025, but some of these experts who are going to be coming through to talk about it. Last week, I spoke with Reverend Dr. David Vasquez Levy from the Pacific School of Religion. Fascinating deep dive into a lot of discussions. I have a feeling today is going to be just as interesting. My guest's name is Brad Onishi. He is focused on this conversation. He understands the history of the rise of Christian nationalism in a very personal way. He himself, a former evangelical Christian nationalist, it says on the website, and he kind of had an epiphany, and he wants to talk to us about it today. So please welcome to these airwaves, Brad. Good morning, Brad. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Your work's really extensive. I looked through your website. I know we could go a lot of places, but please give us an overview of your journey and your work before we talk a little bit specifically about the panel that's coming up.
Sure. I grew up in Southern California, in Orange County, which is a place that those within California know is a pretty conservative place.
Yeah.
Didn't grow up in a religious household, but I converted at age 14, and I converted in a way that was really extreme. I went from a kind of kid who was getting in trouble and mouthing off to leading a Bible study at my high school, going around on the beach boardwalk asking people if they had ever met Jesus or thought about their eternal salvation. By the time I was 18, I was in ministry, going to a Christian college. And by the time I was 20, I was married and a full-time minister at the mega church where I had converted and on my way to seminary. So I wasn't somebody who kind of dabbled in this. It wasn't just kind of a nice little piece of my life. It was my entire identity as a young person. So, and go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask about the conversion piece. When you're in 14, and was there, and you said there was some trouble. Was there a program, or was there another pastor? Was there a particular, organization that kind of drew you in?
So I got invited to a Wednesday night Bible study by my 8th grade girlfriend, and in my mind, this was a perfect way to do two things: get out of the house on a weeknight, which my mom usually wouldn't let me do because I was getting in trouble, and see my girlfriend on a weeknight, which is not something you get to do when you're 14 very often. So I thought, all right, we're going to go to this Bible study, sneak out, and try to make out for a couple minutes, and then go back to the Bible study, and no one will ever know.
Right.
At the time, I was dressed in full grunge Nirvana Pearl Jam era clothing. I had pink hair. I just didn't look like a kid you expected at your church.
Right.
I thought the people there would reject me and be suspicious. They were actually really welcoming. And what the church offered me was something that I think is really good to keep in mind when we're talking to friends and colleagues and family who've maybe gone down a rabbit hole or a way of life that we don't expect. And it offered me two things: answers to the meaning of life with no long division, a chance to really understand the meaning of existence without having to do a lot of hard work. Hey, Jesus will forgive you. Jesus loves you. And now you're part of this great community. That's it.
Right.
No 2 or 3 year process of initiation, no hard work to kind of, figure these things out. And in addition, it provided community. It said, look, you come into this fold and we'll take you in. Now, yes, you have to adhere by really strict beliefs and a really strict way of life and understanding of your body and sex and gender and ethics and everything else. But look, we are now your family. And I think for a lot of folks, whether they're 14 or 40, that's pretty attractive. And it helps us get at least a little window into why somebody would choose to join up with a church or a community that from afar appears to have odious political views.
Yeah. Okay, so fast forward back to where you were. So you're a pastor, or, at a mega church. You've come a long way into this deep dive. Go on from there.
Sure. I left the church when I was 24 to go to graduate school, and my goal was really to figure out a Christianity that would hold together for me, because what was happening is I was so invested in my faith that I kept reading and reading and reading. And the more I learned, the more difficult it became to put together a coherent worldview when it came to politics and ethics. And I remember thinking I wanted to vote for John Kerry, not George W. Bush, in 2004. And my church elders said, look, it's impossible to vote that way and to be a Christian. And I just thought, I'm not sure we can have these like either or views and claim to attend to the most fundamental questions of being human and being a society. There has to be a better way to be Christian. And so I went all the way to England for graduate school, and first time leaving home, first time being away from the church. And I was studying theology, but nonetheless, that led to a transformation. So 20 years later, I'm still a religion professor. I've taught all over the country. I currently teach at the University of San Francisco. So religion is just still a day-to-day focus of my entire life. I just do it now from a philosophical and sociological and historical perspective rather than as a minister. And so I've lived it and I've studied it, and I kind of have a bifocal lens on the whole thing.
Wow, Brad, I relate, and I'm resonating with a lot that you're sharing. You have a podcast called Straight White American Jesus. I imagine it focuses on this thing, but kind of describe your podcast and how it works and what your focus is there.
Yeah, my co-hosts and I both kind of have similar stories. We've lived it, we've been inside, and now we've studied it. So we try to give folks a decoder ring for understanding why so many people in the country think Jesus was a straight white American guy with a big truck and a bunch of guns,
right?
Rather than a first century Palestinian who would probably look like a person of color and considered an immigrant in this country. So we really want to give folks an understanding of everything surrounding Christian nationalism, the politics of the religious right, and what drives MAGA nation in religious terms. And so we started it 5-6 years ago. We've now got 600 episodes and a big audience, and it's just work we think is really important.
Do you have a standard operating definition of Christian nationalism that you think is useful, that you have to share sometimes?
I think we hear a lot about Christian nationalism these days, and a lot of folks think, well, what's wrong with being a Christian and being proud of your country? And my response is nothing. That sounds great. And I think we have many examples of people who live out that kind of patriotism and that kind of faith. Christian nationalism is different. Christian nationalism says, hey, because I'm a Christian, I'm looking around this table today of all the Americans that are represented. Those could be free thinkers and humanists. Those could be Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists. Those could be folks who have a different ethnicity or different race than myself, gender, sexuality. And just because I'm a Christian, and implicitly because I'm a straight white Christian, I just should probably get a different privilege in the country than everyone else. It doesn't mean you all can't be here. It just means that politically and economically and culturally, me and people like me should have more power and more of a say in the country. So, and then you kind of raise your hand and you say, well, why? And they say, well, because this was founded as a Christian nation. And when you introduce all of the kind of complexities of our history and all the ways that, yes, so many Christians part of the American founding, but so many different kinds of Christians, so many folks with views that would not be considered Orthodox Christian, they sort of say, nope, sorry, none of that's relevant. This is a Christian nation in the past. It should be one now, and therefore I'm the one that should get a bigger say in the country. That's Christian nationalism in a nutshell. Now, we can talk about all the ways that looks on the ground in terms of laws and policies and all kinds of other things. But if you think that you're deserving of privilege because of your Christian faith, you're a Christian nationalist. And again, there's so many Christians in the country who don't feel that way and don't think that. And so there really is a difference between loving your country and loving God and being a Christian nationalist.
Are you seeing are there things that you cite as? I mean, this particular panel is about the threat of 2025 and Christian nationalism. Are you able to cite sort of harms now? I mean, there's this threat of what could be coming, but I wonder if we've seen impactful, harms to our society in now and in the past as this is rose. I mean, do you ever articulate things in that way?
Sure, sure. And there's way more examples than we can fit in here in a short conversation.
Right,
but
right.
It's a great question. And I think what I would say is there's some statistics to give folks. And so have colleagues at PRRI, and they did a study a couple years ago, 2022. And what they found is about a quarter of the country thinks that the federal government should declare this a Christian nation.
Mm-hmm.
They think that the Bible should be taught in our public schools, and they think that the Ten Commandments should be displayed at places like mayor's offices and city hall and so on and so forth. So they're basically saying, if you're an atheist, an agnostic, if you're not a Christian, your government should declare this a Christian nation, and you need to accept that you just are not that. And so you're a second-class citizen.
Right.
Now, some folks might be used to that. My colleague at Denison University, Paul Jupe, did a study, and he found 14% of Americans think that the church should have veto power on the government. Mm-hmm. So the church should get the last say. And okay, that sounds kind of weird, but whatever. Well, he also found that 9% of Americans think that only Christians should be able to be citizens. Mm. So now we're getting into territory where, your right to vote, your right to full participation in the country is kind of at stake if you're not a Christian person. Now, we can go even further. When we talk about Christian nationalism, all the sociological data shows us that Christian nationalism is a great predictor, especially white Christian nationalism is a great predictor for one's views on a myriad of key issues. So white Christian nationalists are the most extreme Americans in the country when it comes to immigration. Mm-hmm. Russ Vought, who is a man that many anticipate will be Donald Trump's chief of staff if he's reelected, was recently caught on video saying what he would like to do is, when Trump is elected, make sure that only Christians can immigrate to the country, such that if you come to this country legally immigrating, you cannot do so unless you are a Christian. So that's immigration. When it comes to reproductive rights, the overturning of Dobbs and the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision was a direct result of 50 years of Christian nationalist organizing by just a litany of various organizations. Their goal now is to make sure abortion is outlawed, period. That's a part of the Project 2025 playbook. It's a part of the Heritage Foundation, who made Project 2025 available and published it. And so you can see immigration, you can see abortion. If we look at the various ways that books have been banned and school curricula have been hijacked across the country, you can see that Christian nationalism is a large driver of that. If people would like a deep dive, they can look at a new book by Mike Hicksonbaugh called They Came for the Schools, and that will show you how Christian nationalism has been a deciding factor in the widespread division and polarization and hijacking of school districts across the country. So we have immigration, we have abortion, we have schools. I could go on and on about trans rights. I could go on and on about how there's a desire to overturn Obergefell and prevent gay folks from getting married in the country. Could go on and on about the ways that Christian nationalism is a very good predictor of whether or not an individual thinks that there's an issue of police brutality in our country, or whether or not if systemic racism actually exists. Christian nationalism is a great predictor on whether or not folks believe that there should be any limit on guns and any gun reform in the United States when it comes to bump stocks, AR-15s, assault weapons, and so on and so forth. So it is a worldview that really helps us understand how people see really key issues in our country. And it's not fringe, it's not marginal in the sense that it has no real effect on our public square today.
And I just wanted to clarify something on the, I hear about abortion. I just wonder if reproductive rights, including just birth control, is that also part of the plan, in terms
It is.
of just even not just whether or not, about terminating pregnancies, but also just controlling your your fertility. We heard in the DNC last night they were talking about the fertility treatment that the VP nominee's family went through. So even some of that could be affected by these sorts of views, I imagine.
Yeah, let me give you three examples. In the last year, what we've had is the Alabama Supreme Court proclaiming that IVF is akin to abortion, which is akin to murder. So the Alabama Supreme Court had a decision, in essence, outlawing IVF in the state, based on the idea that those embryos, or that the cells that are
Right.
Present in the IVF treatment and held in facilities are actually human persons.
Right.
The Southern Baptist Convention came out and agreed with that decision. So the largest Protestant denomination in the country came out and also condemned IVF. So we're seeing that kind of beyond abortion kind of goalpost already out in our policies and from religious denominations in the country. Number two would be that J.D. Vance, the vice presidential nominee for the GOP, is somebody who has talked about in the past wanting to police women who are leaving one state to go to another in order to receive reproductive rights or reproductive assistance in healthcare. So there is this desire to basically say, if I'm driving from Texas to New Mexico and on to California, I might be a felon because I'm leaving the state to go get the kind of healthcare that I want and I desire. Now, when it comes to contraception, we can zoom right in. You may say, well, J.D. Vance, what does he have to do with Project 2025? Well, there's a new book that's supposed to be out now by a man named Kevin Roberts. Who is Kevin Roberts? Kevin Roberts is the leader of the Heritage Foundation. He is the chief of the Heritage Foundation. Where did Project 2025 come from? The Heritage Foundation. So Kevin Roberts just wrote a book, and Kevin Roberts in that book says that he is working, and it may be a long fight, but he doesn't care because he will get there, to make sure contraception is no longer allowed in the United States, because contraception is something that has played a role in the breakdown of our civilization over the last half century. That's what Kevin Roberts said. Kevin Roberts, again, leader of the Heritage Foundation. Heritage Foundation, once again, publisher of Project 2025. What the heck does J.D. Vance have to do with that? He happened to be the guy that wrote the foreword to that book. So J.D. Vance and Kevin Roberts are both very conservative reactionary Catholics. They are friends. They have a long and close relationship. J.D. Vance wrote the foreword to his book, a book in which he says contraception should be banned because it is leading to the breakdown of our civilization. Once again, that's the man who oversaw the publication of Project 2025, which included advice and help and input from dozens and dozens and dozens of former Trump staffers and appointees and cabinet members. In the training videos for Project 2025, the woman who has tried to explain to the world that Donald Trump knows nothing and about Project 2025 is actually in one of the videos training people to implement Project 2025.
Whoa.
Her name is Caroline Leavitt.
Wow.
So I could go on, and I can give you all the receipts. We're going to run out of time, but there's a sneak preview.
I really appreciate you going a little deeper on that, and that's exactly what will happen at this event. Brad, along with Peter Coyote, Reverend Vasquez Levy, Dr. Curran Reichert, Congressman Jared Huffman, and more will all be at Burlingame Hall, 6 to 8 p.m. on September 7th. You can learn more about the event by just going to Wake Up Sonoma's website, and you can get more information about it there, wakeupsonoma.org. How can people connect with your work, Brad?
Yeah, Would love to hear from folks and connect with people. The podcast is called Straight White American Jesus. We do it 3 times a week. And we don't think Jesus was straight, white, or American. We're just trying to help folks understand why so many people do think that.
Right.
My website is bradonishi.com, and you can see my writing and all the things I do there. I had a recent piece come out at Rolling Stone about J.D. Vance's very conservative Catholicism and his ties to all of the dynamics I've mentioned today. So would love to hear from you and hope to see you on September 7th.
I can't thank you enough for coming on. I learned a lot of things today. I'm going to find that Rolling Stone article. I'll throw it up on my own social media friends who are out there listening, so we can read this, and it will be another great preview to Project 2025 and the threat of Christian nationalism coming up September 7th. Thank you so much for your time, Brad, and your work.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Have a great day.